Namaskaram everyone. There is so much content nowadays about ancestral worship and Pitru dosh and Pitru stotras and Pitru Paksha and everything. It brings me back to the same question as to, where am I as an individual at? Like, what is my understanding of ancestral worship? Ancestors itself, what is my understanding? And then from where does it go to something where I would say that, okay, now I need to do some specific ritual or process for the ancestors. So how does this process even happen? I really think a lot of us need to be paying attention to this, especially if you all are watching this video and if we are getting a lot of this knowledge and understanding from YouTube videos, which have been created by people who are very specific and certain their own path. And the knowledge they are sharing is very specific to their own sampradaya and their own path, whatever it is. A lot of us, we don't come from that path. We may have very varied background, and so while we listen to that knowledge and stuff, at least for me, I never end up implementing anything I listen online. Sometimes for the knowledge sake, I like listening, but I'll never implement it. There has to be a very clear channel for me as to why would I choose to follow this channel. So for me, because my association with Sadhguru has been for a very, very long time and it's a very deep bond, and I do his practices. So Isha has a lot of these ancestors related processes and rituals, so it is very easy for me to get into those. So one of the Mahalaya Amavasyas, I attended it maybe 3 years back or more than that, maybe 4 years back. And first couple of them when I attended, I was just watching it and I loved watching it. I love being part of the ritual, but I'll never participate because I have no connect with it. And a lot of people who come to these kind of spiritual paths, they are the ones who are not so interested in the religious aspect, so the rituals and all we may not want to do. We are there for our meditation and things like that. But anyway, it's a very beautiful process that happens on Mahalaya Amavasya. I don't know if you know, but more than midnight, like till 1 a.m. or something, this whole process takes place, and there are a lot of different rituals and a lot of things are taking place. Just being part of it is very powerful. There are a lot of these bhajans being played. So it was on one of the Mahalaya Amavasyas that I decided, okay, let me also do something. So one of the rituals they have over there is that they give you this plate of these little cloth sacks which are filled with some kind of grain and something or the other. And it is said that each sack you take for one ancestor. So you decide how many ancestors you want to address, and then accordingly you take that many sacks. And each sack costs like 10-20 rupees or something like that. And then you take that plate and there is a fire, so you kind of think of your ancestors and put the sack into the fire. While I did that process, one of the first things that happened is I actually thought of my ancestors, because that's not something I typically do. Even though I am a curious person, so there was a time I actually traced out the family chart and stuff like that. But what I felt is, because I was doing this process, it actually was a lot more deeper, where I took each sack, I thought through everything about that ancestor, and then I put it in the fire. So last time, in fact, just 2 months back, one Amavasya came, which was the Adi Amavasya. It is a big Amavasya in Tamil Nadu. And so on that day also they did this same ritual, which happens very grandly on Mahalaya Amavasya. But this time it happened in a small way during this Adi Amavasya. So I decided to do it properly, because by this time, after doing these 2-3 times and being part of this Mahalaya stuff, I had kind of become aware of some of the ancestral things that were shaping up. One thing I had understood very clearly is that my entire ancestral line is very strict Jains, actually. They're very strictly Jain. So that was there, and also I traced my Kul Devi, right? And I started visiting her about a year back, and that had a significant difference in my experience of all deities and in general my life. So I figured, I think this whole thing about ancestral worship and thinking about the ancestors, doing something about it, was gaining momentum in my life due to these few things, experiences. And so this time during the Adi Amavasya, I actually did it very intensely, because you see, I was going through all of these health problems also. And so many of my treatments were working to some extent and then failing. So I decided, I had no choice. I had to only depend on my sadhana. So the sadhana just peaked like anything. It just became so intense, because I was literally just holding on to it for my life. So anyway, this Adi Amavasya, intensely I went and got these sack bags, and I thought, very about my ancestors, to the extent that I actually went and pinged my mother, and I was like, okay, because when I was thinking of one of my grandfathers, and I realized that grandfather's parents, I knew about his father, but I actually didn't know anything about his mother. So I pinged my mother like, okay, who was the mother of this person? And it was so fascinating. I never grasped the fact that his grandfather, his mother, had actually died when he was 2 years old. And I was so stunned with that information, because I was like, oh, I never really, I don't know if I heard it before, but I just did not piece it together. Because you see, I was always scared of this grandfather, because he was always this strict person and this, but now all of a sudden so much of sympathy and love came in me for this grandfather who has passed away. Because I never realized that his mother passed away too. That would be such a tough life. And then I know a little bit about how his father raised the 3 boys, and how the life went. But now I was thinking of that whole story of his father and his brothers, with this information that the mother had just died. So that was really, that changed my entire perception, and I realized that whatever the ritual and process I was doing, that apart, but the fact that I'm actually thinking about my ancestors more deeply, my own emotion towards them is changing, my thought process towards them is changing. It's making me understand why they might be a certain type. And I also was able to understand why, even from a very practical perspective, it makes sense to be thinking about the ancestors, simply because you see, all of their tendencies and all their very strong thought processes which would be there, they will get passed on to your parents in a very natural manner. And naturally your parents are going to create their own set of karma, and a lot of that karma is a result of whatever the grandparents were having. And then what I am carrying, my own thought processes and my own karma, is so much as a response and a reaction to my parents, and thus to my grandparents. So because of this, just this sheer aspect of thinking about the ancestors in a little bit deeper way, in that ambience of a ritual and in the powerful temple space with other people also conducting these rituals, is very powerful, I felt. And this is just thinking about a very natural progression which would happen to all. But we are also, there is the other, especially in the Indian society, because we are all tied, by our guardian deities, Kul Devtas, and by so many spiritual / religious processes we do, which are energy based, and they impact us on a much more deeper karmic level. So these would also get passed on very naturally, energy to energy. And a lot of times we see that there are certain traits which keep repeating in a generation to generation. Like, for example, we know one family in our community who very strangely, they just have male children, and the wives of the male children end up dying at certain age, and it keeps repeating. It is so strange, almost creepy. But that's a very pronounced example, but quite possibly in a lot of us, those smaller traits which we may not even be able to spot, they are getting passed on in a more deeper karmic level. And in these rituals, I think there's a much stronger possibility of becoming aware of them, or even just getting rid of them. So I would just suggest that if you all are looking at doing some ancestor worship or Pitru related sadhana, then one is to just be thinking about the ancestors in a deeper way, and second is to kind of trace back what is, in terms of ancestor worship, what is already happening in your family, and or what should be happening. Because if maybe your parents are not following anything, but before that some process could be there, So I think we need to also think about all these things, because I think a lot of people are just going to a YouTube video, looking at some sadhana and doing it and practicing it. But that's a very, it's not really the best way at all. Either taking it from a guru who you're already associated with and deeply connected, the way I am with Sadhguru, and that is a one way. Second way is to find out what is actually our heritage, like me in my whole Jain situation. I'm sure there are things, like, for example, every time that a person's death tithi comes, they tend to do some kind of puja in the temple. That is one ritual that was there, I think, but nobody's really doing anything now. Share with me what you all are doing for this Pitru Paksha and any kind of ancestral worship you all are looking at.